your host, Jimmy Chen. Arrgh.
And with the local DBC news, LL Cool J with the triumphant.
Hello. I am not Spider-Man, but Jimmy Chen. Jimmy Chen. Your friendly neighborhood Holy Bible explainer. And my channel is Food for HNM. I'd like to share with you what is going on in Honolulu, Hawaii. We are being hit by rain, a lot of rain, and it is flooding here on Oahu. But I learned that Maui gets flooded more, and the big island, big, Oki, Da is a character that looks like this. Solve power. The big island, Nui. In Hawaiian, the word is Nui. The big island of Hawaii has volcano on it, or volcanoes, and it is also being flooded. So please pray for Hawaii that prayer works. When you send up a prayer, our God in heaven, the one true God, hears every single person, and he is moved by individual prayers. The more people who pray for, in this case, Hawaii, then he listens from heaven, and then he will act. If more people pray, then it sort of moves his heart, because God has a heart to act, to save, like Hawaii. So, people got into magic. If you pray, you can, about this much, make things happen. People said that in the past, if you all, thought a certain way, you could create a movement, right? A movement, because everyone's like-minded, and they all think the same, and then their actions are all directed in the same way, and then you could, all around the U.S., everyone's, there's this movement, people, let's say recycling, right? Everyone's yes, it's a good thing, and then they actually wash those bottles out all across the U.S. and put them in the right place. It's like a movement to recycle. See, a lot of people think the same way, and they could get something done and change the world. So when everyone prays, because I understand stuff that has to do with, it's called divinity. Pastors, they have a master's degree of divinity, in the study of divine studies or divinity. No, I'm not doing this. I'm putting my hands over here. As things of the one true God and church and other kind of things like that. How does he work with people on the earth, and holy angels and spirits, heaven and hell, the soul. Those are all things that are within or related to the divine studies, divinity. Well, let's get back to the reading. You know what I'm saying? If everyone prays, it can move God's heart to do something positive for us here on the earth, us little small guys. So this is 2 Chronicles 8. Solomon's other activities. Remember, Solomon was the greatest king who ever lived, in Israel, maybe who ever lived, period. At the end of 20 years, during which King Solomon built the temple of the Lord and his own palace, King Solomon, rebuilt the villages that Hiram had given him and settled Israelites in them. Solomon then went to Hamath Zobah and captured it. He also built up Tadmor in the desert, and all the store cities he had built in Hamath. He rebuilt Upper Beth Horon and Lower Beth Horon as fortified cities, with walls and with gates and bars, as well as Baalath and all his store cities and all the cities, for his chariots and for his horses. Whatever he desired to build in Jerusalem, in Lebanon, and throughout all the territory he ruled, there were still people left from the Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. These people were not Israelites. Solomon conscripted the descendants of all these people remaining in the land, whom the Israelites had not destroyed, to serve as slave labor, as it is to this day. So let me talk about that. So we do not like slavery. Like, no, like on the earth, you cannot own slaves. You cannot enslave your fellow human being. So what's so good about King Solomon? If King Solomon lived today, he would be better than me. He would say, no, I also believe slavery is not right. So your question is, Jimmy, then why did he have slaves? And my answer is, these Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. The reason when Israelites went into the promised land, they were told by the one true God, the Lord, to kill these guys off, is because these, believe it or not, these people were not really like people. They're more like cavemen, like part animal and like part human. Now, is it okay to enslave a subhuman creature that isn't even, it does not meet the standard or meet the mark of being a human being? I think so. I think it is okay. You have to watch Lord of the Rings. There's this creature called Smeagol or Gollum. It's not quite human. Now, if all these Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites were all like Smeagols, these Gollums, like there are thousands and hundreds and thousands of these Smeagols running around. That's what King Solomon did. He just turned them into slaves and gave them something to do. But King Solomon did not make slaves of the Israelites for his work, for they were his fighting men, commanders of his captains, and commanders of his chariots and charioteers. So, remember I said ancient Israelite and ancient Israel and modern Israel are not the same. But you see the descendants of Jacob. King Solomon made his fellow descendants of Jacob, the Israelites, the true Israelites, he gave them the best positions. So like the normal people, they were actually not the descendants of Jacob. You have to remember, like thousands and thousands and thousands of these guys, in a good way. The descendants of Jacob, the true Israelites, they had the highest positions. They were the rulers of Israel. They were also King Solomon's chief officials, 250 officials supervising the men. Solomon brought Pharaoh's daughter up from the city of David to the palace he had built for her. For he said, my wife must not live in the palace of David, king of Israel, because the palaces, the ark, the places the ark of the Lord has entered are holy. On the altar of the Lord that he had built in front of the portico, Solomon sacrificed burnt offerings to the Lord according to the daily requirement for offerings commanded by Moses for the Sabbaths, the new moons, and the 3 annual festivals, the festival of unleavened bread, the festival of weeks, and the festival of tabernacles, in keeping with the ordinance of his father David. He appointed the divisions of the priests for their duties, and the Levites to lead the praise and to assist the priests according to each day's requirement. He also appointed the gatekeepers by divisions for the various gates, because this was what David, the man of God, had ordered. They did not deviate from the king's commands to the priests or to the Levites in any manner, in any matter or any manner, including that of the treasuries. So let's remember, priests, you think they just offer sacrifices, but we see that, okay, Levites are also of the priestly class. Priests are descended from Levi or Levi. They're all one family. So we can see that basically priests offer the sacrifices, and they also praise, they like sing songs praising the one true God, and then they assist other priests, and then they also have security priests, gatekeepers. All Solomon's work was carried out from the day the foundation of the temple of the Lord was laid until its completion. So the temple of the Lord was finished. Then King Solomon went to Ezion, Geber, and Elath on the coast of Edom, and Hiram sent him ships commanded by his own men, sailors who knew the sea. These, with Solomon's men, sailed to Ophir and brought back 450 talents of gold, which they delivered to King Solomon. Let's read the next chapter. The Queen of Sheba visits Solomon. When the Queen of Sheba heard of Solomon's fame, she came to Jerusalem to test him with hard questions. So you have to understand, sometimes a guy will ask a girl a lot of questions because he kind of likes her, So Queen of Sheba kind of liked King Solomon, so he came to ask him a bunch of questions. Arriving with a very great caravan with camels carrying spices. So she had spices, large quantities of gold and precious stones. So like diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and sapphires. She came to Solomon and talked with him about all she had on her mind. Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was too hard for him to explain to her. When the Queen of Sheba saw the wisdom of Solomon, as well as the palace he had built, the food on his table, the seating of his officials, the attending servants in their robes, the cupbearers in their robes, and the burnt offerings, he made at the temple of the Lord. She was overwhelmed. She said to the king, "The report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true, but I did not believe what they said." So she also wanted to see who's better. She was like, like in Boogie Nights, Mark Wahlberg's character. Well, kids don't watch Boogie Nights. It's too adult. It's like kind of nasty. But he has a funny line like, "You're not the boss of me. I'm the boss of me." Or like, who's the boss, me or you? I think the Queen of Sheba wanted to compete. Well, she's kind of suspect, I would call it. She sort of liked him, and she wanted to compete, see who's better. Who is better, King Solomon or her? So I think that she is also very smart. So she wanted to come to him and show off her spices. See all these spices I have? See this gold I have? She didn't necessarily bring it to give to him. You hear about people having to pay tribute to a greater king. I think she came to because she's a queen. Queens and princesses are different. They usually give stuff away, but I think in this case she wanted to just because a guy is not going to really take a woman's stuff. She just came to show it off. Look what I have. And then she probably was humbled because he had more spices, more gold, more precious stones, and then she's smart and he's smarter than her. And then she's saying, I can't believe what I see. Indeed, not even half the greatness of your wisdom was told to me. So she's admitting, some people I admit that I have this problem. She's like, I admit, King Solomon, you are greater than I. That's not easy. Not an easy thing to do. Your wisdom is greater than was told me. You have far exceeded the report I heard. How happy your people must be. How happy your officials, who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. Praise be to the Lord, your God, who has delighted in you and placed you on his throne as king to rule for the Lord your God. Because of the love of your God for Israel and his desire to uphold them forever, he has made you king over them to maintain justice and righteousness. Then she gave the king 120 talents of gold, large quantities of spices, and precious stones. There had never been such spices as those the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. The servants of Hiram and the servants of Solomon brought gold from Ophir. Remember, he has his own gold. He has a way to mine and bring gold to himself and to Israel. They also brought algum wood and precious stones. So see, he had his own gold, he had wood. Remember, he has cedar wood, and now he also has algum wood. And he also has precious stones, diamonds, rubies, emeralds, sapphires. The king used the algum wood to make steps for the temple of the Lord. This is an interesting story. He meets with the Queen of Sheba. So the steps, we all walk steps. I gotta take the elevator. Where's the escalator? I gotta take the steps. But for the steps going up, for the temple, there were steps, steps. He made them out of algum wood. The king used the algum wood to make steps for the temple. for the temple of the Lord, and for the royal palace, and to make harps and lyres. Oh, okay, so you make instruments, musical instruments. You make them out of algum wood. For the musicians, nothing like them had ever been seen in Judah. King Solomon gave the Queen of Sheba all she desired and asked for. He gave her more than she had brought to him. So remember, what you gotta read in between the lines. They just sort of exchanged gifts. So King Solomon gave her back gold. Like, this is my gold. It's from Ophir. I give you some wood. Don't get nasty. I'll give you algum wood. You know, you need wood to build your buildings. Probably gave her tons of wood. Tons. You know, a ton is 2,000 pounds. Tons of wood. You know, like wood. Like what comes from trees. You need wood because, remember, when you build a building, a lot of it is actually wood. The foundation is concrete. Sometimes you have steel, right? Reinforcement. You have rebar within like some of the concrete foundations and like the corners of the building, or like sometimes like you need to, the floor or ceiling of your building may need to be made in concrete because the foundation is concrete. But most of the inside, like the walls of the inside of your place, are all made of wood. Like, so you need wood, you know, from trees. You need wood from trees. Trees, we always have to have trees. So, remember, when you're thinking about the entire world, there has to be trees. Like, wherever you live, you have to have trees. Because you got to cut them down so we can have places to live. So he gave her wood, and then that wood you can make musical instruments out of. And then she must have been scratching her head, sort of. Because remember, King David played like this harp thing. And he wrote the Psalms. And then, although most of them were chanted, he started to like sing some of them, sing the Psalms. Mostly you chant the Psalms and then you sing them too. And then remember, King David, King Solomon's father, is the one who said, we're going to have a new thing. We're going to have priests play instruments when they're standing in the holy place. So King Solomon, you know, he and his father are really into music. So he probably taught the Queen of Sheba about music. You know, like, you don't just chant. You do this singing thing where there's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then she was like amazed. I never heard of anything. You invent that? And then you use these things. Like, see what this sound, this thing makes this kind of sound. Bang. You know, and then this thing, boom. You know, and then they have trumpeters. You know, and his father invented all of that. Because remember, his father had like a harp, or like a lyre, which is like a guitar. So at this point in history, all they had were like guitars or harps. So his father not only invented or wrote most of Psalms, King David, he invented like music and songs, sort of. Yep. And he taught the Queen of Sheba how to sing, and like what this showed her an instrument besides like a stringed harp or lyre. She's like, look at these are like drums. What's a drum? So you play them all together. And King Solomon was like, yeah, you just play them all together, you know. It's a ding 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 ding, and you go boom 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 ding boom 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 boom, and you get boom 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 boom, you know. Yep. So you have trumpets, and then you have like the drums, and then you have like stringed instruments like violins, and then you also have, let's see, in a band you usually have guitars, drummer in the back, then you have like piano player. So when you think of an orchestra, usually you have one piano guy, right? And sometimes he's the conductor. He'll play and then he'll like run to the front and start, conducting. But just like, is clam chowder New England the white or the red? Sometimes it's hard to remember all of them. So remember, there's trumpets, but they're made of metal, and then they call woodwinds like pipes. There's like two types of instruments that you blow into: flute, oboe, clarinet, and bassoon. Right, so they had flutes. I think they had flutes back then. But okay, let's get back to verse 12. To sum up, they exchanged gifts. King Solomon gave her gold back, but more than she gave him. Gave her wood to build her buildings with. Good wood from trees. And that kind of wood, she would also be able to make musical instruments. And she had nothing like them had ever been seen in Judah. So she, wow, I went to visit King Solomon and he showed me something called, look at these, I brought them back. They're called musical instruments. And then he also gave her precious stones back, more than she gave him. Then she left and returned with her retinue. That's her group, to her own country. She returned to her own country, which is, let's look it up, Sheba. Sheba was Arabia, Yemen. Yemen is where Yemen is now. Or it could be Ethiopia. We're not sure. So now Solomon's splendor. The weight of the gold that Solomon received yearly was 666 talents, not including the revenues brought in by merchants and traders. Also, all the kings of Arabia and the governors, probably Arabia, of the territories brought gold and silver to Solomon. King Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold. 600 shekels of hammered gold went into each shield. He also made 300 small shields of hammered gold, with 300 shekels of gold in each shield. The king put them in the palace of the forest of Lebanon. Then the king made a great throne covered with ivory, a throne, to sit on, his chair, and overlaid with pure gold. The throne had 6 steps. I wonder what kind of wood the steps were made of. And a footstool of gold was attached to it. On both sides of the seat were armrests with a lion standing beside each of them. That's very Chinese, so like King Solomon's kind of Chinese, Chinese people like to have like 2 lions right there. They call 狮子. 12 lions stood on the 6 steps. So you had 10 more lions than Chinese people. So maybe King Solomon had like 6 sons, and the Chinese son is one of them. You know what I mean? Like, he's the lion guy, and the Chinese people like lions. They have like the dragon dance and the lion dance. You know, not actually his sons, but like, remember I said King David could look into the future because he was a prophet, like a Jedi. And then like King Solomon could also look into the future. You know. So there were 12 lions on 6 steps, one at either end of each step. Nothing like it had ever been made for any other kingdom. So like musical instruments, you know, no one had ever seen lions on steps before. All King Solomon's goblets were gold, and all the household articles in the palace of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. Nothing was made of silver, because silver was considered of little value in Solomon's day. The king had a fleet of trading ships manned by Hiram's servants. Once every 3 years it returned, carrying gold, silver, and ivory, and apes and baboons. So King Solomon liked apes and baboons. Remember, apes do not have tails. King Solomon was greater in riches and wisdom than all the other kings of the earth. All the kings of the earth sought audience with Solomon to hear the wisdom God had put in his heart. Remember, it's not quite that they came to listen, they came to compete with him, you know. Then year after year, everyone who came brought a gift, and then he would give them more gift, you know, like a bigger gift. Every year, everyone who came to compete with him brought a gift, articles of silver and gold and robes, weapons and spices and horses and mules. So King Solomon would give them probably the same thing, you know, gold, wood, and wood from trees to build buildings, and, you know, precious stones. Solomon had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots. You know, that's ridiculous. Just because someone gives you silver and gold, robes, weapons, and spices, and horses and mules, you have to give them silver, gold, robes, weapons, and spices, and horses and mules back? Let's say a visiting king on the earth, right? Another king, because there's royalty to this day. You know, in England they have royalty, and other European countries they have royalty. They have like princes and princesses, kings and queens, dukes, duchesses. But, you know, if this visiting king wants to give you gay, you know, you have to give him gay back. Now you'd just be like, sorry, that, you know, I'm straight. I'm good. I'm straight. You know, I'll give you straight back. You know, I'll give you what I can give you. King Solomon uploaded 7,000. Solomon had 4,000 stalls. Just in case. 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots, and 12,000 horses, which he kept in the chariot cities, and also with him in Jerusalem. He ruled over all the kings from the Euphrates River to the land of the Philistines. So you can see that he bested all of them. So whoever would come to him, he would, instead of killing them and conquering them, which he did, like sometimes, so he had two strategies. His father would just beat them all up and like steal their stuff and like beat them all up. So they were like, I'm afraid of King David, and take their stuff, and they'll be like crying, And then King David would very often, like regularly, like ride in there and just like, I'm King David's guys, or King David himself would go there. I'm King David, look at him, and they'll be like, okay, I'm scared of you, you're the boss, King David, you're the boss, our empire or our, kingdom is under your kingdom. Come in, like intimidate them. See, that strategy King Solomon also had, but he has a second strategy, right? He will allow them to visit, and then he will like destroy them with his superior mind, and show them something new. I invented something, and they'll be like, ooh, and then like whatever they gave him, they're like, aha, I'll give you $1,000. See how rich I am? They like hold up $1,000 bill, and he's like, oh yeah, $1 million bill, I'll give it to you. And then they're like, oh, I lost it. Okay, here's your 1,000, I'll take your $1 million. And they walk away, wah, wah, he's better than me. And then in that way, he also like bested them and conquered them. I mentioned that you could play chess with someone. Like, what if, like, instead of the U.S. and Russia have differences, they war. And they strategize against each other, in a very complex way, But what if they just played chess, and whoever won that chess match for like the next 50 years, is better than the other guy, and then that informs all the policy that they have towards each other. So it's similar to that. King Solomon, he said, I have this second strategy. Well, I'll invite you, and then I'll beat you up, and then like impress you, and then like give you money, like I'm the money guy, Because remember, King David had a lot of money, and then King Solomon, he inherited his father's all of his money, and then his brothers had to like say, okay, like you have to have most of the money from our dad. So that it is for the honor. All of them said, King Solomon will let you be that rich. Like you have most of the money from our dad. To honor our dad and like for our country and for, in praise and worship for the glory of the one true God, So King Solomon had like a ton of money. And then he would use it, see, because his brothers support him. He would use it to like conquer people, conquer them with his superior knowledge, his inventiveness, and then like with the money, Because remember, like I said, his father would kick your butt really hard, and he'll steal your stuff, and then he will like intimidate you. So I think with his knowledge, inventiveness, and all that money, he would like kick their butt somehow, and then steal their stuff somehow, and then also like intimidate them. King Solomon, smart. So he ruled over all of them from the Euphrates River to the land of the Philistines, as far as the border of Egypt. The king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stones, and cedar as plentiful as sycamore fig trees in the foothills. King Solomon's horses. It's right here in verse 27 and 28 they control. Okay, once King Solomon ruled over, so remember, like, Rome subjugated Israel about 2,000 years ago. Like, Israel was part of the Roman Empire. Kind of. I remember that it's not, like, really in the Roman Empire. But when your kingdom is over another kingdom, you can make demands, you know. And he would just nicely, like, demand these things. Silver. But he bought it, you know, like, remember King David said, I will not receive this threshing floor. Like, someone wanted to give him a piece of land, and he said, no, I will buy it from you. So, you know, King Solomon's kind of, he's wily, you know. Like, once he subjugated another kingdom, when he wanted to buy the silver and the cedar and the sycamore wood, cedar wood and sycamore wood, it says here that silver was not worth much. Like, the price that you will receive for selling silver was not much, because he is like the top king, so he could, like, set the prices. So once he subjugated other kingdoms, like, I will now buy the silver from you, but because I'm the king, and look at all the gold I have, and look at the way I created the gold market. So now I'm gonna, like, rob you of those things. No, I'm just gonna buy them from you, but this is the price, and it's a more than fair price, because of, like, what he did, like, how he, like, established everything and controlled everything, and, like, redistributed everything. So King Solomon's bright. Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt and from all other countries. King Solomon's death. As for the other events of King Solomon's reign, from beginning to end, are they not written in the records of Nathan? Nathan is actually his brother, the prophet, in the prophecy of Ahijah, the Shilonite, and in the visions of Iddo, the seer, concerning Jeroboam, son of Nebat. King Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel 40 years. Then he rested with his ancestors. And that means he went to heaven and was buried in the city of David his father. And Rehoboam his son succeeded him as king. Thank you for listening. That was very long, but I think it was very interesting. You know, people love to hear the story of Queen Sheba, how she came to him. And, you know, a lot of people think that she came to him to have sex with him, and then had his child, you know, ran away with his sperm, and then, you know, that is why Ethiopia is Jewish, or, like, they might have the Ark of the Covenant. I don't know. I don't think so. So thank you for listening. Remember, keep God first. He'll take you places. And believe in the Lord Jesus. And He will give you your best life now. And be baptized. And when you die, you'll go to heaven and live forever. It's better to keep living than die and be like, cease to exist. What if you fell asleep and never woke up? So scary. Even if you don't quite believe it, I'll be like, no vegan. I don't want to like not exist. I'll believe. I'll try to believe. Be genuine, not a heroin, addict. Heroin's bad. So have a good one. So, rabbit ears.